So thank you for joining us. My name is Ken Bowden. I'm the manager of commuter services here at TBARTA. Joining me today are my colleagues from Commute with Enterprise, Cheryl O'Connor from the corporate office, Arlinda Carulli, Frank Rodow, and Mark Cornelius from our local office here in Tampa. So welcome to the Future of Vanpooling. Just a bit of housekeeping. We'll take questions at the end of the conversation or at the end of the presentation, at which time we'll also open this up for conversation. But in the meantime, if you do have a question, there is a chat box below. Feel free to use that and send your questions in the middle of the presentation. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get underway. So the topics we want to present include TBARTA's recent Vanpool marketing campaign. Then we'll do a quick little review of Vanpool basics just to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what this transportation mode is and how it works. Then we'll talk about the Vanpool program in District 7 and some of the great work that Arlinda Carulli is doing in both Southwest and West Central Florida. And from there, we'll move on to the future of vanpooling. And let's go ahead and get this started. I'm going to talk a little bit about our Vanpool marketing campaigns. So we divided our marketing into two parts. The first campaign, which ran from April 2021 till June, targeted potential writers. We used electronic billboards at strategic locations throughout the region that targeted single occupant vehicles with the message, 1, save money by vanpooling, 2, use Vanpool to relax and catch up on sleep, and 3, get work done on your commute. We worked with Clear Channel Media to get this message across, and embedded in this were 2 social media components. One by Clear Channel, who was somehow able to track cell phones driving by these signs and feed those folks with marketing materials on Google and Facebook. I don't even want to know how that works. A little scary, but it works. We also worked with a company called Digisphere that borrowed heavily from the materials generated by Clear Channel to target individuals based on certain demographic criteria, such as their work location based on their email address. Go on to the next slide. Our next campaign ran from October 2021 through mid-December. In this campaign, we switched to targeting employers. Our message to employers primarily focused on employee recruitment and retention. We switched from billboards to radio and television and continued with Digisphere, this time targeting folks in HR and other senior management positions. The response from both campaigns was positive, but when my colleague Arlinda Carulli talks about the opportunities for Vanpool, she's going to discuss the economic sectors that responded to our second campaign. I think some of those have been a little bit surprising to me. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Cheryl O'Connor with Commute with Enterprise. Cheryl, feel free to go ahead and take this away.
Thank you. And actually, I think we're going to go to our
yeah, we jumped the gun here. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Ken. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's so great to see some familiar names on the call. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Arlinda Carulli. I'm the account executive for Commute with Enterprise. So through our great partnership with TBARTA as well as Commute Connector in the Southwest Florida region, I work with different work sites, right? I work with identifying opportunities to see where we can introduce the Vanpool program, where it's a great fit, to see where we can make this work for our community. So some of you may be very familiar with how the program works. So for you the ones that don't, I just wanted to do a quick overview. So that way, when you guys hear the future of vanpooling, what we're looking ahead, you're in the loop of what's already going on. So looking at how the actual program itself functions, it functions a lot like a large carpool, right? So ideally, what I like to do is raise partnership or work on partnerships with work sites in our area to identify opportunities to introduce this program to their workforce. So typically we take a look and see if there's 4 to 15 co-workers who live near one another, share a similar corridor to get to the work site. We go and talk to this group, let them know exactly how the program works. We allow them to pick one of our recent fully equipped model vehicles, anywhere from SUVs to 15 passenger vehicles. They meet at a centralized location of their choice and use one of our cars to get to and from work. And there's a number of benefits from this, not just being able to have them split the costs, right? TBARTA is going to subsidize the program. So the first $400 is going to be covered by them. The remaining is split between the riders, but that means a lot to a rider. That's less mileage on their personal vehicle, less wear and tear, depreciation, and being able to split that long distance commute cost with 4 to 14 other individuals could mean a lot for someone. We do also make sure that the insurance is going to be covered. We've got no deductible, right? The vehicle is covered bumper to bumper up to a total loss, $1 million in liability, 24/7 roadside assistance, and 200 miles per person use. So each one of the van, 200 miles for them to utilize. Now, one thing that we don't get to do is take the vehicle back at the end of the day. So we also make sure we have preferred vendors for maintenance. I'm going to go ahead and have Frank pop up just to say hello. This is our local support. I'm going to have him introduce himself, just so you guys have an intro of the full team. So Frank Raudow, unless he's having technical difficulties.
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Okay, perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Frank Raudow. I'm the branch manager here in Tampa. I handle all the operational side of Commute with Enterprise. So basically, once our Linda gets the Vanpool on the road, it then transitions over to me. I'm in touch base with the coordinators. I handle all the maintenance, any vehicle switch outs, and then just the overall customer satisfaction of the employees. So I deal a lot with TBARTA, have a great relationship with them, and we look forward to growing Commute with Enterprise.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank. And again, this is local support that we have here in the Tampa Bay area. That's why I wanted to make sure Frank jumped on the call as well. Ken, if you want to go ahead and move to the next slide. So this is just to give you guys a quick overview of District 7. So we've got the partnership that we were talking about with the transit agencies, Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority being one with 163 vans and growing on the road. And then the other one that we also put on here is Commute Connector. So Cheryl O'Connor was able to launch the program with District 1 back January of this time last year. So it's been about a year now. We've successfully seen the program grow into 30 vans. And the reason we included this, we actually have quite a bit of our residents from District 7 that take part in those vans, going to work sites that are located in Polk County, Manatee, or Sarasota. So again, we see a lot of both sides of being able to utilize the vans. And in terms of the top employers that we have partnerships with, James A. Haley is probably the biggest one we have right now with close to 70 van pools. For them, it's been a tremendous help because it has been able to cover a lot of parking and facility concerns that they have. So, close to 70 vans on the road means, over 300 parking spots reduced for them. We do actually have a parking lot that's dedicated to van pooling, which is fantastic to see. So if you guys ever drive by James A. Haley, make sure you look for that Commute Tampa Bay decal, and you'll know that's a van pool. McDill is another one, Bay Pines VA. And the baby of the program, as I like to call it, TSA. So we've got Tampa and Pi actually on there. So it's exciting to see the growth of the program to hit double digits And we launched this basically throughout COVID. So we're at 11 vans right now, and that's the picture that you see there is with me and a coordinator from TSA. Next slide. So to kind of give you guys an idea of all the van pools, this is what I tell Ken is one of my favorite, messiest maps I've seen, and I want to continue getting a lot of dots on that map because that means more van pools being delivered. So again, that's 163 with over 800 participants right now. So that's a significant amount of vehicles off the road. So when we focus on congestion and over 640 people that we're helping with the transportation solution. So you'll see the actual work sites that color coordinate with the routes and the long distances that the folks are traveling to get there. And on the next slide, you'll see the actual impact of what I mean. This is the data that we collect from our existing participants, right? We figure out exactly where they're coming from, how many stops they have along the way. And this is a slide that includes all the work sites that we have partnerships with. So on average, we're seeing that those participants are saving $8,600 per year. That's very significant, right? That's almost like a raise for a family and a lot of money that, especially because of the partnerships we have right now are federal sites, all of the cost is going to be covered for them. Usable time back for riders, 465 hours that they spend, they used to spend in a single occupancy vehicle per year. That's almost like a part-time job per month, right? Now they're taking that time back to, catch up on their favorite Netflix shows, like Ken showed the marketing material that we used earlier to capture their attention. You maybe get work done on the way to the work site, maybe take a nap. So we are hearing back from those work sites saying that they're seeing a lot of changes, right? They're seeing a lot of progress. They're coming to work refreshed, recharged, ready to be more productive. And the last thing is the miles reduced on their personal vehicles. I'm not sure if you guys have tried to go out and buy a car recently, but those prices have really gone up, used or new. So imagine being able to save 20,000 miles a year that they were putting on their personal vehicle. That's significant. That means that 2 years we're looking at 40,000 miles, 360, and within 5-year period you're looking to replace that personal vehicle. So again, these are numbers that we collected from District 7. And it's very significant and I think appreciative to be able to show this to participants and others that are considering moving forward with this type of program. And the next slide, Ken. So in moving forward, there's a lot of opportunities that we have been able to discover in District 7. As I mentioned, the partnerships that we currently have are with federal sites. So Ken and I have really shifted gears here and focusing a lot more on the private sector. Obviously, they face very similar challenges. So now we're talking to a lot more hospitals out there, a lot manufacturing site, distribution centers, hospitality business, I think has really been a big one, landscape companies, as well as schools, anywhere from universities to the district centers. And in having conversations with all of these different types of industries, the number one challenge that we're hearing out there is recruitment and retention. Housing costs is going up. A lot of folks are moving to rural areas and those folks need jobs, right? So for us to be able to recruit and retain talent, you have to increase that hiring platform. And sometimes distance commute, they may not be able to go in and work at a hotel for that time for what they're getting paid. So offering this is a great solution. That tardiness, absenteeism, it's crazy to hear that companies are offering bonuses to the folks that are showing up on time. Just by showing up on time, you can make some extra money. Parking and facility costs. So when we focus on downtown areas or again, hospitals, this is a big one for sustainability efforts, right? We're moving towards a lot of green initiatives. And this program, we can track what that CO2 emission reduction is over the usage of the van pool. And then diversity, inclusion initiatives. And what we've done locally is partnered up with a lot of transportation committees so we can get more up-to-date news, right? See where we can be involved. Staffing agencies right now, this is a big one that we're having a lot of conversations with. Local chambers, career source, economic development, right? They know new companies that are coming in that are used to all kinds of transportation options up north, and they come to Florida, and we're a little different, right? We're getting there. We're moving forward. We're going the right direction. And then also with local chambers, they know the businesses, right? They know they've got all these partners that we can communicate with and let them know that if there's a struggle with recruitment or retention, here's a great solution for that. And one last thing that I wanted to share is in working with hospitality. I actually had one in the Southwest Florida region. This is Naples Grand Beach Resort. It was great because they were featured in the news down south. And what they did was they partnered up with the local career source. They noticed that if they were really having a hard time being able to recruit new staff, they knew exactly where they should be focusing in terms of area and what region. So the existing employees that were coming from that site and said, hey, we're going to do this backwards, right? We're going to take that Vanpool and see if we can fill it up. They had an event, said, we've got transportation covered for you guys. You park at this park and ride in the morning, 6:45, the Vanpool leaves at 7 o'clock, and then vice versa coming to the work site. They were able to hire 17 people on and get signed on the day of. So it's great to see, again, all three of these kind of partner up and work together to be able to have a solution for the challenges that companies are facing. So we're hoping to do the same thing in the Tampa Bay area. Ken and I are excited to see that the growth of the program, even through some challenging times. We've had some Vanpools retire. Frank knows all about them, which, we wish them well. We hate to see them go, but again, being able to put new Vanpools on the road and work with this private sector and introducing more, we're looking forward to the future of Vanpooling, which brings me to Cheryl O'Connor, and I'll have her introduce herself.
Great, thank you, Arlinda. You guys have so much going on the West Coast, best coast of Florida. I'm Cheryl O'Connor. I'm the corporate commute manager for our public sector. So what that means is I sit here in our global headquarters here in St. Louis, but I oversee the United States in trying to create or expand these public-private partnerships like the ones Arlinda just explained with TBARTA, as well as Commute Connector down to the south. But I am not unfamiliar with the greater Tampa area. I grew up in Volusia County, went to Stetson University, and stayed in Central Florida for the better part of the first 25 years of my life. So was over in Tampa quite often in that whole area that makes up your district. So I'm not just a corporate talking head. I'm very familiar with the area. Been in transportation for about 13 years and specifically working on Vanpools for the past 9 years. So we brought everybody together today to talk about the future of Vanpooling. The team did a great job going through what's going on locally, but where are we taking this in the future? How is Vanpool changing? How are we changing as a company to meet those changing factors in the market? So next slide, please. So just an overview, 75% of the commuter Vanpools that operate in the United States are tied to some sort of public sector or public transit system. So we value those partnerships. We've got about a little over 80 partnerships across the United States with folks like TBARTA and FDOT on the Commute Connector program. And so with those partnerships, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by that partner as well as the participants in the program. Very valuable, and that's a really high percentage of folks that are tied to a public transit system. So we want to make sure that we're accurately and efficiently servicing our communities in which we work. So Vanpools as a whole, Arlinda sort of went through this when she went through the Vanpool basics earlier in the presentation. But in the space where we are partnered with a public transit agency, it helps to expand the reach of that public transit system. It helps to eliminate some of those last mile constraints. Last mile, first mile, last mile has been a buzzword in the transportation industry for the past few years. And we help to eliminate some of those barriers. We also operate as or think of a Vanpool as an express route, right? More like door-to-door service as opposed to transferring and making multiple changes on your commute. It is the most efficient form of public transit. If you all had a chance to join our call yesterday about the infrastructure bill, I talked about how a contracted program like the ones with TBARTA and Commute Connector, the capital cost of those programs is right around 35 cents. So it is an efficient way to help expand the footprint of the transit system. And according to NHTSA, we are the safest mode of public transit. So just to give you a little bit more of an idea of how Vanpools operate in the larger public transit system. Next slide, please. So that's all well and good. We're expanding our transit systems. We're getting folks to work. We're helping to increase the economic vitality of your area. But we're in a changing world right now. This slide speaks to how many folks were working in the office prior to the pandemic, and then once this says post-pandemic, but we're still in it, right? We should maybe change our language on this slide. But a lot of folks are now working from home across the nation. Our fleet, just as many other public transit systems around the United States, we also took a hit in ridership. We went from approximately 12,000 vehicles down to something north of 6,800. So about 40% of our fleet terminated, not due to the fact that they didn't want a Vanpool anymore, but they just didn't need it, right? They were working from home. And that helped us as a company shift our focus over to those essential worker industries. And over the time period from August 2020 to July of 2021, we were actually able to start 2,000 new Vanpools across the United States in those essential worker industries. So just a little example of how we, shifted our focus. But going back to this slide, on the right side of it, you can see that what people desire, right? Pre-pandemic, about 62% desired to be on campus at their work site, right? Now that's gone down to about 37%. So how do we interact in that type of environment? How do we make sure that we're still servicing those folks that want to be in the office and those folks that are working hybrid schedules? So the fully remote didn't change much, but that hybrid schedule, you can see that's a pretty big increase in what people want to do post-pandemic. Next slide, please. And so our workforce is also changing. I just mentioned those flexible or hybrid work arrangements. There's also generational changes in the workforce. If you can click. So the workforce by 2025 is going to be 54% millennials and Gen Z. So that implies, that means that there's a shift in desired working schedules and how folks get to work. One more click, please. And by 2030, 65% of the workforce is going to be millennials or Gen Z. And so what does that mean? If you could go ahead. Sorry, it's sort of awkward having somebody else click through. So those workforces, not those workforces, that generation, this generation, I'm part of that generation, right? We're true digital natives. As an elder millennial, I do still remember, playing Oregon Trail in elementary school, and I do remember life before smartphones. But those who are just maybe 5 years younger than me don't remember a world where, yeah, we didn't have smartphones and we didn't have free Wi-Fi everywhere. And so the term that's being used for that part of the population is digital natives. They have all of the information and the world is available at our fingertips. Couple simple clicks and you've ordered a new shirt, or you've pulled up an Uber, or hopefully you've joined a Vanpool, right? We're moving towards ensuring that all of our Vanpools are in mass type apps and things like that. So, but going back to the workforce, they want their commute, or they want their world, right, to be fast, flexible, and personal. And shared cost, or I'm sorry, they are cost conscious and climate conscious. Try to say that 5 times fast. I don't think I could. So how does that affect really the Vanpool world? How do we accurately and efficiently continue to service these folks with Vanpool? And so that's what we're really looking at Commute with Enterprise. Next slide, please. So there's also, not only do we have a changing workforce and changing desires and how we get to work and how often we're going into work, but there's all these other market forces that are changing the world of vanpooling. So every day I get a question, oh, when can we get electric vehicles in our fleet? And that's a great question, and something that we're seriously looking at Commute with Enterprise, which I'll get into in just a minute. But how do we integrate into these MOS systems? How does the commuter tax benefits? You know, we finally got parity on that a couple of years ago with the parking benefit, but how many employers are taking advantage of it, right? How do we expand the use of that valuable tool in TDM? And then I'm not going to go through all of the little bubbles on the page, but you can see that there are a ton of market forces out there that are driving behaviors and driving the Vanpool business to change. Pun intended on the driving. Next slide, please. So what does that future look like? So based on the changing workforce, the changing schedules, all of those market forces, the future of Vanpool needs to be more flexible, individual, available, efficient, valuable, comfortable, and convenient, right? That's simple, right? Let's just check those right off the list, right? There's a lot, it's way easier to say it than it is to do in practice. But these are the things that we're looking at Commute with Enterprise. So first and foremost, those hybrid schedules. How are we responding to that? We're currently working on a modernization project that is looking at that. You know, do we oversubscribe the Vanpools and then it becomes just a scheduling issue, right? Or a scheduling opportunity, right? I don't like to say issues, I like to say opportunities. You know, how do we get these 15 people or 10 people in the van and to work if they're only going into that job site 2 days a week, right? And how do we work with their employers and their potential ride partners to make that efficient for them and make it work? How do we open up our data so that we can be part of these MOS type or aggregator type apps? How do we then layer on top of that hybrid work schedule, right? They're all things that folks that are far smarter than I am are working on here at Commute with Enterprise, but this is where we want to be. And then the actual product, the actual vehicle is changing as well. And I mentioned electric vehicles earlier. There is not a widely available and cost-effective electric vehicle option in the 7 to 15 passenger range right now. There are Teslas. We can put folks in Model X Teslas, but they become quite cost prohibitive. So we haven't seen the wide launch of those vehicles across the United States. However, there's about 400 electric vehicle options, either in design or production right now. And we're monitoring those and working with the OEMs on when those will be available. And as soon as they are available, they will be in our fleets across the United States. So stay tuned for that. But then also, you know, how does this Vanpool modernization project that we're working on, you know, how does that evolve into that electric vehicle space, right? Then we have to start thinking about charging stations and, you know, the distance that a vehicle can travel on a single charge. And then way into the, well, maybe not way into the future, but even beyond that, how do we operate Vanpools in an autonomous vehicle space? Right, that totally flips the script. What, you know, we no longer need to approve drivers, right? So we can get Vanpools together even faster. But what does that mean in terms of safety or scheduling those folks, or where does that vehicle live when it's not commuting? So all of those things, they're great problems or opportunities to be talking about, right? We're very excited at Commute with Enterprise to be working on this stuff and to help push vanpooling into the future. Next slide, please. So the actual structure of Vanpool programs is changing as well. So historically, you sort of have this Vanpool program structure spectrum. Again, trying to say that 5 times fast. I can't say that either. You know, historically, on one end of the spectrum, we've got these directly operated programs. These are run in-house at a public entity. They're purchasing the vehicles and marketing the program. Really great examples out in Washington State of that. Your friends to the east, and in Lynx, they have a sort of a hybrid middle of the road program where they own the assets. Commute with Enterprise then manages the program. And then moving all the way down to the other end of the spectrum, you've got purchase transportation or contracted service, and which is how the program is run both with TBARTA as well as Commute Connector, where you all, and thank you for your partnership, have contracted out your program, and you've got a Vanpool vendor owning the assets as well as managing the program. However, this is changing. If you could click one more time. So what we're seeing is an uptick in layered or increased subsidies or incentives across the United States. We currently have 2 fully executed contracts and 3 more that we're negotiating right now, where there's an existing subsidy in place. I'll use the 2 examples that we actually have launched. So out in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, there is a regional entity called the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. It's made up of the 9 counties of the larger Bay Area. They provide a $350 subsidy per van per month. And then Solano County and Santa Clara County have said, well, we've got some extra funding, you know, in marketing funds and COVID relief dollars. For a limited time, we want to actually provide more of a subsidy to help our folks out and help those folks that are either entering the workforce or returning back to the office after pandemic impacts. And so Solano County is providing an additional $200 for their Vanpool groups that start or end in Solano County, making it $550 for the Vanpoolers in that area, combined with that MTC subsidy. And Santa Clara County is matching that $350. So if there's a Vanpool that is both starting and ending in Santa Clara County, it's a huge county, right? So that seems limiting, but this is Silicon Valley that we're talking about. So so those Vanpoolers are getting $700, and we've seen really great success with those. That extra funding, that extra subsidy is helping folks to make the price point of their Vanpool even more attractive, and helping folks to get into Vanpools who previously were not. So also in terms of program structures, fleet utilization is changing. You know, I've talked quite a bit about those hybrid schedules. How do we how do we address that, right? Do we oversubscribe them? And then during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, we were seeing the fleet being used in a different way, ridership, or I'm sorry, the actual utilization of seats was lower because folks wanted to social distance and not expose themselves to many folks. So, but then on the hybrid schedule side of things, again, do we oversubscribe that? How do we accurately get vehicles in and out of any given area to affect those changing environments or those changing desires on how they use the vehicle? And then availability of vehicles. So it's widely known, right? There's a bit of vehicle shortage in the United States. This has not impacted us in terms of being able to provide van pools for our programs, but it is definitely something. I know Dave Villani, I think, was on the line earlier, and Frank. It's something that our operations folks are stressing about, right? Making sure that we have the right vehicles in any given market for our programs. And then the chip shortage is still impacting that as well. And then also Buy America. So if for anybody on the phone has been in TDM or vanpooling for a long time, that the waiver on content was rescinded back in 2019. We're working, and what that did, so for those folks who are not close to this, so then it caused programs that use federal capital dollars to now the van pools have to be not only assembled in the United States, but now they also have to have content that was produced here in the US, and that percentage also went up. So it has to be 70% domestic content. So what that did is severely limited the amount of vehicles or the options of vehicles that we can put, or that any van pool vendor or directly operated program can put into their fleet and into their program. So we're working very closely with the FTA on this situation. We hope to have a decision soon, waiting on the legal folks to come to a decision on that. But hopefully that barrier, that restriction will be lifted soon. But it's something we're closely looking at. We always want to make sure that we're compliant with our contracts as well as our funding sources. So that's also a changing bit in the industry. And next slide. So our funding structures have changed. You can see here, this is a lot of words on the slide. Historically, there's been all sorts of funding availability for van pool programs. If you'll click one more time. But with the passage of the infrastructure bill, we've got a ton more. This is just a snapshot. It's not all encompassing. And I haven't updated my slides since going through the policy, but there's probably 8 or 9 more funding structures that I could add to this at the federal level due to the passage of the infrastructure bill. We also saw COVID relief funding being used to start or expand van pool programs in some of our population areas similar to Tampa. The public entity or the transit agency used those funds to make sure that we kept our operators whole, right? We made sure that we were paying our bus drivers and able to keep them on staff. And that is exactly what the funding was intended to do. But then they realized, hey, we've got some extra cash here. How else can we positively affect our transit system utilizing these dollars? And so some folks have decided to utilize that for expansion of their van pool or creation of their van pool program. So we're seeing some great results on that. And then part of the infrastructure bill was a reauthorization of the surface transportation bill. And if you had a chance, again, to join us yesterday, Jason Pavlichuk went through what that means and the impact of it to transportation funding. At the end of the day, breaking it down very simply, those data unit values under the FTA formula funds, they increased by essentially 40%. So on the revenue mile side, instead of getting 43 cents in populations over 1 million, you're now getting somewhere north of 60 cents. So that is huge. That level of funding is not guaranteed, but we don't typically see that funding go down. So that's an added tool that folks can use to help create or expand their Vanpool programs. So, man, that's a lot. And I'm happy to answer any questions or dive into that funding piece a bit more, or whatever you would like.
Yeah, we'll open this up for questions. If anybody would like to ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself. And if you don't have a mic, go ahead and type your question into the chat box.
I have either wowed everybody or put everybody to sleep. It could go either direction.
Hi, this is Sarah Hendricks. I have a question. You were talking about Buy America, and I would think that the whole point of that is to give United States vehicle manufacturers more business. So how are they responding? I mean, I think they would be jumping on the bandwagon to deliver. So what's going on there?
Yeah, and that's the intent, right? And we want to buy American, right? There's just, as enterprise, we don't manufacture vehicles, right? So we're beholden to the manufacturers. We're seeing, and the funny thing is, foreign companies like Nissan, Toyota, they actually have the Buy America compliant vehicles in the 7 to 15 passenger range, right? So we're talking about really that 7 passenger like minivan, SUV range. They have the Buy America compliant vehicles. Some of those folks are not willing to allow the US federal government into their books, so to speak. And so sometimes the actual vehicle is compliant, but the company is not willing to go through those steps to prove that compliance. And then the domestic manufacturers, I can't talk today, my brain is mush. The domestic manufacturers oftentimes don't comply with it, right? So if you're looking at like the Dodge Caravan, they're actually assembled in Windsor, Canada. You can see Windsor, Canada from Detroit. It's right across the river, but it's not physically US soil, so that doesn't comply. And then the content, oh gosh, I could talk about this forever. The content piece, because we outsource so much of that, and by we, I mean just companies in the United States, right? That it's, my opinion, my personal opinion, not even my professional opinion, I think that the manufacturers are trying to figure out, okay, we were sourcing our steel from Canada. How do we switch that and source it from the United States? And then 2, vanpooling is a real small piece of the overall transportation system. So we're just not a priority, right? When you're selling millions of vehicles every year as a manufacturer, and this one little piece is being hampered, right? It's just not a priority. I feel like that's not me talking for enterprise. That's just my own personal thoughts on it. But you're right. I mean, why aren't they jumping on this? And it's just not. Does that answer your question? I feel like I just rambled on there and didn't make a coherent thought.
No, that did explain it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Looks like we have a question that appeared in the chat box. I'll see if I can answer this. Sarah, do you have a follow-up question? I don't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all.
So circling back to the marketing campaigns, for phase one, targeting single writers, did you utilize social media without the aid of being activated by electronic billboards via Digisphere? Was this equally as effective as the out-of-home advertising in traditional media, TV and from TV and radio? That's a good question. I would say that the marketing campaign that we ran in the first half, those results were actually difficult to tally up. I think we did have an increase in the number of people that were contacting us about Vanpool. Folks kind of went off, and we did manage to fill empty seats. And some of it might be kind of a waning atmosphere in the COVID pandemic, but some of it might have been related to our marketing campaign. It's really difficult to separate those two out. I will say that the number of phone calls that we received varied greatly. I feel like our radio and television campaigns, particularly the radio campaign, had a much greater impact. And it was a part of the Vanpool equation, talking to employers that we really wanted to solve, and we were getting phone calls from employers. So it felt like that portion of our marketing was more successful. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Chloe, do you have, if you have additional questions related to that, feel free to type or ask away by unmuting yourself.
Ken, also weird happening with the audio. I thought it was just me at first, but it sounds like something is coming out from your end. No, only when you're talking now. It sounds like you're underwater.
Sorry about that.
It just started too, yeah. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that, hearing me talk a little bit about vanpooling and how it works and, the future, what we're looking at moving forward, asking some of you that if you have a partnership with an employer or you know a work site that you think maybe they need to do an analysis of their existing staff, see where they're coming from, please put them in touch with me. Let me know. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat as well. Please save it. So whether you want some more details about vanpooling and how it works and talk about those benefits, or if you'd like to synergize, see if there's a partnership opportunity between us, then even with the bus system, right? With looking at both sides, the Tampa, Pinellas, there's a lot of options that maybe we could help out folks that have that the third shift that there is no line, or if there is a connection opportunity to get them to the finish line, to the work site, please keep me posted. So I'll put my info in the chat.
Yeah, we're always looking for new and innovative ways to market and advertise these programs, and definitely want to sit down and have the conversation with you if you have other ideas or different ways to go about it. Yeah, let's talk about it.
I'm going to stop my video. Maybe the sound will be better without video. And I thought I would just mention or reach out to Chloe Robinson. I'll write that answer to you and send it off to you directly.
I was
Can-
typing too fast. It's .com, by the way, my email, not .vom. I apologize, guys. I'll retype that.
Ken, it kind of sounds like you're in the movie Scream. I don't know.
Synthesizer.
It's terrible.
I did.
So sorry.
I did wanted to touch on the commuting from county to county. I know that's a challenge for us. We do have service that goes to Tampa and comes back to Pinellas County, but our service ends early. And so I guess maybe that would be something that we could possibly think for some of our riders that use our service to get to and from Tampa. I'm not sure if you would do, instead of from work to work, you would do like from hub to hub, from like Marion, or from work from home from a transit center in Tampa to another transit center in Pinellas County.
Yeah, it's up to the group where they decide they want to meet. It's up to them to decide the schedule. So there's a lot of flexibility. That's the best part about the Vanpool program. So I'd love to discuss it more with you and see if we could partner up on that. Because I'm sure you guys are getting a lot of calls. Hey, why isn't there a bus here? Why isn't there a line here? We hear that all the time, but there's not enough, participants on our end or folks that could put a whole bus on the road. So it could potentially be just, 7-passenger vehicle or 15-passenger vehicle that we could help with.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vanpooling can be a good gauge for demand in either direction, right? You get a bunch of folks all coming to a park and ride lot and they're all going, let's say downtown, right? Then, hey, that might be a good place to put a fixed route bus in the future, right? Or conversely, you've got an underperforming route. You're just having 10 people on a route a day, or something like it, whatever example you want to use. Maybe talk to those folks, figure out what trip are they making. Is it the commute to work trip? Well, maybe let's put those 10 people in a Vanpool or a couple Vanpools, and that way creating efficiencies in their own commutes, but then also creating some efficiencies on the financial side for the transit agency or the public entity running that service.
Mm-hmm.
This is Sarah Hendricks. Again, I just have one other question. So, and this might speak to maybe Cheryl, your experience just nationwide. There are several cities in the United States that have transit benefits ordinances, also commuter benefits ordinances that require employers to offer to their employees the ability to set aside pre-tax income for transportation expenses. And I'm curious if you have any opinions or experience working with those cities that have those commuter transit benefits ordinances in place, and how that may have affected the number of people that might have decided that they're going to either take transit or join a Vanpool so that they can enjoy that benefit.
Yeah, man, I could talk about that for hours too. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So we do have experience in working, San Francisco, New York, DC. I'm blanking on some of the other cities that have them. I think they work, right? In the TDM world, it helps folks get out of single occupancy vehicles and into some other mode, and helps the general public start to think about, how am I traveling around, right? Do I need to get in my car alone and make this trip, or can I use the bus or rail lines or a Vanpool or what have you? Where we see those not working is when there's no teeth behind it, right? If those employers, let's say that it's, you have to have a commuter benefit program if you are 50 employees or more, right? if there's no consequences to that employer not doing that and not coming up with their transportation master plan or whatever those stipulations are, then we see it, it's slow to grow, it's slow to become compliant. And I think that's really what happened in DC. I was working for Arlington Transportation Partners when that transit benefit ordinance went into effect. And we're like, oh, like this is going to help us, right? This is going to help to drive mode shift and what have you. And we just didn't see that because it didn't have any teeth behind it. So yeah, for those employers that really champion it and push it, right, and do the steps, it really works. It helps us in TDM world to reach all of our goals. It's sort of a couple things, right? If it doesn't have teeth to it, if you don't have the employers to champion it, it's not as successful as other areas.
Okay, thanks. So the lesson there is you're going to have a transit benefits ordinance. There has to be a monitoring and an enforcement mechanism as part of that. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
And we work with, on our government side of things, or government and policy, we work with different lobbyists and governments and things like that to get those established. So I'm happy to further that conversation with you if you'd like.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Sorry if I sound like I'm underwater. But thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Arlinda. Thank you, Frank. This has been great. And thank you to all the great questions. Hope to have a follow-up on this in the months to come. But I thank you for all of your input into this.